Welcome to our end of year tubing care video. Whether you've already made an investment in your maple sap tubing or are considering it, this video will be an incredibly useful resource for you as we walk through our end of season cleaning techniques that we have found to be very efficient and effective. The techniques we'll walk through today are generally applicable to tubing installations of all sizes. However, what we're doing is very specific for what I'll consider to be a smaller tubing installation where we do not have any main lines. We're using all 3/16 lateral lines. We've got about 100 taps that we're going to be dealing with. But again, a lot of the concepts are generally applicable. And for those with a main line installation, you can do a similar technique. You're just going to have to scale up in regard to the pump and the volume of the solution that you're going to be using. So we use a multi-step process. Number one, we're going to go and pull all of our taps from the top, working our way down, making sure that we've drained out as much sap as possible out of our lines. We isolate, we do one line at a time under vacuum to kind of ensure the maximum amount of sap gets pulled out. And then we're actually going to go back and we're going to take our diaphragm pump. We use a SureFlow and an Aquatech pump as vacuum pumps on our sap setup. But you can turn that around and actually pump this solution back up the hill. The Aquatech pump works a little bit better for this because it has a higher PSI rating, and the membrane is a specific type of material that holds up very well against hydrogen peroxide. Not all diaphragm pumps will. So be careful of that. If you don't have a vacuum pump, but you have an RO, most of you are probably using an Aquatech pump. You can just take that off your RO, use it for this purpose, then put it back on. If you don't have one at all, I highly recommend it, both for the RO, which I've got videos on, as well as increasing your sap yield. Every inch of mercury you're able to pull, you're going to gain about 5% sap yield increase. And that little Aquatech pump can pull about 20 inches of mercury at the pump. And then, you gain additional vacuum as you go up the hill, and you're going to get at least double to 150% more sap. So anyhow, back to this. So once we're mixed up here, we're going to actually pump that up the hill, and we're going to allow it to come out at each spile along the way. You're going to want to have some safety gear when you mix up the solution. You're going to want some goggles and gloves. The hydrogen peroxide, again, it's 12%. It's highly concentrated. We're going to dilute that down to 3% using a 3-to-1 water to peroxide ratio. And then when we get to each tap, working our way up the hill, we've just got a little wire here that we bent that you can see the tip. We just use that to depress that ball valve in these check valve spiles. That allows the solution to just pump right out of there. We want to do that to make sure we've got everything flushed out of the drop line and spile. And then we're going to remove that and stick that spile back in the cup on the T and move up to the next tap. Now at the end of the year, after we do all this cleaning, we'll let that sit with the lines totally full of the solution for a number of days. That gives you really maximum contact time to kill everything that's in there. And then we'll go back and we'll pop the top spile off the line and let everything drain out of the line. Then we'll go back and coil it up. And when we hang it up the following year, we'll cut off all the spiles and replace those each year. These are really meant to just be a one-time use. But we leave them on during the cleaning process because of the ability to put them in the cap and hold the solution in the line to maximize your contact time. Okay, we're going to go out to the woods now and walk you through step by step how we do everything. Okay, today we're pulling out our 3/16 taps, getting ready to clean and store our tubing. We've got a multi-step process here that we're going to walk through. And so at the end of the year, we're going to isolate each vacuum line. We're going to go one at a time to the top or the end line at the highest elevation. We're going to pull that top tap. We're going to let the sap drain out of this drop and be sucked down the line before we go ahead and insert it here to keep the vacuum after we've drained that drop. Then we're going to work our way down to the next tap and so forth. Okay, here we are at the next tap, and you can see the sap that we let out of the last drop working its way down past this T. And the sap that's still in this spile and drop line. So we're going to go ahead and pull that out and do the same thing here. You can actually hear that, the vacuum pulling the sap out of this. And again, elevate this to pull as much sap out of the drop as possible. And then insert it into your cup so that the vacuum can reestablish, and you'll see all that sap start to move on down the line. We're going to proceed, repeat that procedure for each of our taps on every line going down. And once the sap's all out of the lines, they're going to move on to the next phase of cleaning it, which is actually going to be pumping a food grade hydrogen peroxide solution up through the line and allowing it to come out from each drop and spile. Another tip for when you're going to pump the hydrogen peroxide solution up your lines is to use a smart outlet if you have if your pump is within range of your Wi-Fi, and if you want to be able to turn the pump on and off remotely, like when you reach the top of the line, or if you've got a long stretch between taps and you want to turn it off to prevent it from maybe over pressurizing before you get to your next tap. We use this, it works very well. It comes with an app you can download and install. You can get these from Home Depot for relatively cheap. That way you can turn it on or off remotely if you don't have a helper. I use that at the top to turn it off when I cap the last tap. If I had a helper out there, I would just call or radio or yell down the hill to turn it off, and that would work as well. Okay, as I mentioned, we're just going to use our vacuum pump box and the pump in here now kind of in reverse order of how we use it all season, and use it to pump the hydrogen peroxide solution up through each sap line individually. So we disconnected the sap lines here and just have these valves closed. Typically I've got another 3 up here as well that are in use. But we're just going to have this line be the inlet drawing from the hydrogen peroxide solution, and then where it pumps out, we're just going to go ahead and connect each sap line to that and use that to pump it uphill. And then we've got this ball valve here. We'll open it when we're going to pump it up, and then when we're all done, at the end we'll close it and disconnect the line so that it stays so it stays full of the peroxide. All right, so this is part of step 2, where we're going to actually rinse the lines with hydrogen peroxide. We're using a 12% food grade hydrogen peroxide that we've diluted with permeate down to 3%. And we've already pulled the taps and sucked the line dry. Now we're actually pumping hydrogen peroxide back up the line and out each drop line and spile. And we're going to work our way from the bottom up, making sure we've got a full amount of hydrogen peroxide in the line at all times. And we're going to flush each drop line for about 30 seconds, 10 to 30 seconds. And then we're going to cap it again in here to hold the peroxide in here and continue to pump more up. And we're using a smart outlet to be able to turn the pump on and off so we don't over pressurize our lines while we walk from one tap to the next. All right, so we've got our pump on, and we just depress this ball valve a little bit in there, let that run for a little bit, and then we're gonna stop that. Okay, here's the procedure again. Right, our next tap, we're gonna take this out. Okay, we just started the pump, push that down, let this drain for a little while. And then we're gonna move on to the next one here in a minute. Okay, when you've reached the top of your line, you're gonna finish up doing the same procedure you've done on every tap, pushing in that little ball valve with our little piece of wire, letting it flush for about 10 seconds, and then remotely turn your pump off, or call or radio for your helper to turn your pump off so you don't over pressurize your system. And you're going to cap this up with the lines full. So you've got hydrogen peroxide, 3% food grade solution in your lines, no air bubbles at all, totally full. And you can leave it in here for days or weeks even to get maximum contact time. And then You can drain your lines and leave them up, or you can drain them and coil them up for the season. Okay, the final step is to drain the hydrogen peroxide from your lines by opening the top tap and either letting gravity pull it down or use your vacuum pump if you have one to drain it all out. You can coil up the tubing using a DIY tubing spool, which we have a video on this simple, cheap, and effective build. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to our channel for additional updates.